This is Call of Duty 3. We're here on Xbox Series X, diving into the fantastic and generally classic multiplayer experience. Be sure to like the video. Subscribing is great as well. So we're getting 620p with 60 FPS and auto HDR support as well. So this is a classic Call of Duty experience, like I mentioned. It's something I played when I was considerably younger back in the day, and it's kind of amazing to be back here taking a look at the game so many years later. It really is kind of shocking, as I assumed I'd never be able to actually find a match and be able to play this game. It's just wild. It seems as though they've either fixed some of the server issues or something like that, because once again, there's actually a couple different match options and some relatively semi-full lobbies that you can join to play and experience this game. It's wild. And it really is something that is truly special to me, because again, I played this when I was younger. This is, a very, very old Call of Duty game. It's like one of the originals, and the fact that the multiplayer still persists all these years later is really quite telling. It's still quite a blast to play, and it's a very different Call of Duty game. Well, at the same time, when you jump in here and you experience what it has to offer, you can kind of get a feeling as to why the franchise has endured as well as it has over the years, because even though this does feel and look a little bit different, it's still a blast. It feels very smooth. Visually, it actually looks pretty well done. It's got neat class systems, and it's historical in the sense that it's actually trying to be quite accurate to the era, but also in the sense of like the weapons and the fact that it doesn't have all the fancy, I guess you would say, customization and style and weapons that they do in later CODs, where you really personalize things. This is, you've got your rifleman, you got your medic, you got your very well set classes. There's different vehicles, there's different tools, and the modes are fantastic. If you've checked out other content I've done, I talk about war mode a lot. This is war mode here, where you're using momentum to capture flags and push towards the enemy team. So I actually played quite a few matches. I spent a fair bit of time sitting here playing a bunch of different lobbies, and I was like, oh, I should be filming some of this. So that's where we kind of ended up with a bunch of different matches, and I was like, this one was fun. It was really back and forth. It was action-packed. I used a lot of the different classes that are present here, and it's like the different factions have different weapons too. If you're on the Germans, you've got different guns than you do if you're on the American team. And I always thought that was really interesting too, because there is a sense of balance and also a sense of like, different roles that you fit into, even though you have the same roles on each team. Although the medic class is about the same both ways. You just get the powerful trench gun, and you need to save lives if you can, otherwise it's kind of wild. And yeah, then the artillery, they can do like artillery strikes after so long, and everyone plays kind of a bit of a role. And it's neat to have, this range of weapons, this, I don't know if you would call it like wonky or janky type of shooting too. Like, the guns don't just shoot smoothly. You actually have to, be kind of like creative, and you have to try to line things up, and you got to kind of hope for the best. There's a nice sense of like randomness to that, where it's not just like, your gun shoots smooth and you get the kill every time. You actually kind of have to like really earn that, or kind of hope for a little bit of luck too. Particularly with the trench gun, I was forgetting how much of a, almost like a Nasher from like Gears style of shooting it was. And then I'm like, yeah, let's check out and try some different weapons, because it's been so long. This is like what, 2006 or so. Yeah. And then nowadays, as of playing this, it's been nearly, we're coming up close to 2 decades, a decade and a half, and just thinking of all the things that have changed, since then, it's just wild. This type of multiplayer really just would not exist in the modern era. It's sort of, well, you could look at it as being arcade-like, but at the same time a bit more authentic. It's a really weird hybrid there, because you'd be like, oh, well, it's not, fancy detailed, or it doesn't have all this in-depth stuff, but at the same time, it's got all of the classic, symbols, it's got the straightforward weapons. The weapons don't shoot necessarily perfectly. You have to be, strategic in how you use your weapons and your equipment. the same time, you're kind of hopping and shooting, and it's a little, you know, it's a very different kind of game. They were very much still playing and tweaking with the formula of COD. It's the one after this that really set forth exactly what the experience was going to be like in the long term. But yeah, this is it's a treat. That's the biggest thing, is it was an absolute treat to be back and playing this game. Because as I said, I really legitimately thought I would never play the multiplayer again in this. And I would assume there's certain reasons as to why they're getting this all prepared and whatnot. But yeah, it was crazy, you know, and I've actually been back a couple days, you know, playing for a little bit since, just to kind of really sink into and soak up that nostalgia. It's wild. It's still a blast. Like, I don't know what it is about this one that just hits it so right. The weird combo of vehicles, the iconic level. Like, seriously, some of the maps in this game, just amazing. The multiplayer maps, there's so many that are just straight up iconic. And I was like just hopping between them, you know, through these little matches and whatnot. And I was like, wow. Yeah, I forgot how fun these are. And you don't see them in any of the current CODs, really, right? Because the maps are designed for a very different, you know, era. You'd have to really rework and reimagine them to have them fit into what we have today. So it's kind of like they're time capsuled in. There really were some just great maps and levels to play in on this one. It is such a delightfully fun title. Like, really just like a great time. I always kind of try to recommend people checking this out, because the campaign's really cool too. You know, I've done a video kind of review and stuff talking about this game. The campaign's great in this one. It really is. And again, it's just different from what we're used to now. But, you know, the multiplayer was really something that I spent a ton of time diving into. Didn't get all of my multiplayer achievements. I probably should have grinded a little bit harder back then, but, you know, at the time, you don't care. You can always get the achievements later. And then it's a decade and a half on, and you're like, whoa, okay, not getting those. But, yeah, you could literally just jump in, have some fun, competing, blasting, fighting, firing away. Oh, there was a nice little double there with the noob tube hit. Yeah, you know, you notice things as you age, where it's like, oh, this is kind of like almost a bit cheap, but that's how this went. You know, like the noob tube thing, and there's some like really kind of like interesting setups here that are like, wow, that really does some crazy damage. That's kind of incredibly overpowered, but that was also fun. Was that, like, nowadays everything seems so balanced out. And, you know, back then for shooters, they were really still playing around with formulas and trying different things. And that created some scenarios where some weapons were just more powerful, and that was fun. Was kind of like dealing with that, or coming up with strategies to deal with certain things, or just having fun with those powerful weapons. It was always cool. I still think visually this looks pretty good. I mean, you know, it's quite like jagged and stuff. I think the visuals, though, have like a bit of a, almost like a hazy type thing that does help hide that a bit. But you could definitely still tell that is the case there, where it's like, you know, this is lower resolution. But for me, the charm, you know, goes beyond the visuals. It's just fun, good, classic COD gameplay. Unlike really anything we have now from this title. So it's kind of amazing, once again, to just be in here running around shooting and fighting enemy teams. I wish I would have actually captured more matches, because, you know, there's so many levels that I can think of that are just like really stuck in my mind from over the years. I love this one, but, you know, there's like Fuel Depot, and then there's the one French Town, and so many good maps, seriously. And there's like the forest level was always fun, and I don't really remember the names off the top of my head, but there are some amazing spots. And then, you know, you could use vehicles. This one wasn't ever really set up for the vehicles too well. It was always a little awkward, because they like could get to certain spots, but they can't get to other spots. And that makes them a little less useful, but that also helps with infantry being able to actually, you know, move around the map and be able to get to positions and to capture stuff. But I remember it just being like a brutal battle to try to, like, you know, actually win the matches and get there. And it felt so competitive back then. It's so intense. And I know it's almost, maybe for some it's just silly nowadays, but for me it's still such a special, cool thing time-wise. It's timeless to me. And you know, you could have large scale. It was like 24 players on the maps. It was 3 times larger than Call of Duty 2 what it had. It was actually trying to be pretty ambitious. The classes, the maps, Burville, yeah, Etterdam was like a cool, really cool one. Poison, Verdun, Urgent. Like some of these maps are so good. And there's some like map pack things that came out, and you got some more levels, and I think they really nailed the multiplayer here. It's kind of almost a shame that people aren't able to really enjoy this one in the modern era. Like, I mean, you can go and you can play it here, as I'm showing clearly, but people probably won't because, you know, it's old, right? Like, it's an older game. That's just how things go. But it was so special to be diving in here, and again, showing off the different classes. Like, I'm using the sniper rifle right now, I was shooting the rifle, picked up, like, the regular assault class. I usually do the medicing. That was my thing, is I would go around as a medic. I would heal people, I'd use the trench gun. I'd have a blast. It was so fun back in the day. Like, I don't even know how many hours I have on this one. Probably a lot. Or maybe less than I necessarily think, because time is so much different when you're younger. You know, just for what you could do. And you played it just because it was fun. You know, there wasn't any sort of, like, real system other than, like, your leaderboard ranks. You literally just played it because it was enjoyable, and you liked the challenge, and you liked the fighting, and not everything is aged perfectly within it, but I still think it's a great time. And hopefully, in the very near future, more people will be able to enjoy the wonder of Call of Duty 3 multiplayer, because I do think this is so classic and distinct. And it's probably mostly only nostalgic for me, but, you know, I'm sure there's a few other people out there that this kind of hits the niche for, and you're kind of like, oh yeah, no, I had fun with this one back in the day, it'd be fun to dive into. And that to me is just sitting here being like, wow, this is awesome. It's a blast. It's such a treat. And I'll just let you enjoy some more of the multiplayer in action and the combat, but yeah, this was a great time. So much fun to dive back into. It really was special.